Hello and welcome to another video. My name is Dr. Lasker. I'm a consultant radiologist, and this video is in reply to a comment on another video talking about tips and tricks on how to get through an on-call as a radiologist. Now, on-call, what does that even mean in the first place? Some of you may be confused as to what that actually means. Now, on-call basically means is when you're actually working out of hours. So out of hours where there's not much of the clinical staff around, there's no one really around really. That's when you're on call. That's when you're kind of running a skeleton service and you're trying to get through the night, which can be really, really stressful because you don't really have your seniors, you don't have anyone else really around to try and help you the way that you'd otherwise have during a normal working day. So what you find is that when you're a junior especially, it can be really, really stressful. And one of the things that you find is as a junior radiologist, you start to say no to a lot of scans, right? Not because, not because you should be saying no, it's actually more because you're a bit worried that how much input can you really have with regards to the scan. You're not feeling very, very confident about the kind of input that you can have on the patient journey. Which kind of brings us to our first point, and that when you're ready to go on call, you're actually better than you think you are. Even if you were to hang around the radiology department for about a month, then you probably know more than most other doctors running around the hospital asking for the scan in the first place. And in that, there is some value. The fact that you can actually offer some more perspective on an image then the person asking for the scan is already going to give you more value and more worth, right? So you should know that you are worth more than you really think you are when you're doing these on calls and when you're doing these out of hours pieces of work. The other thing is that, often I find that it's your confidence that really is the barrier, right? So often you'll find as a junior radiologist or a junior doctor is that you're comparing yourself to your peers or you're comparing yourself to someone that's more senior. And as the years go on, you start to notice that the people who are more junior than you doing the out of hours work or any sort of work, there is a difference between you and them. And you start to realize that actually there is a merit to actually having a little bit of experience. But that is something that you kind of feel like you're lacking when you're first starting, but you actually have more experience than the person asking for the scan in the first place. And that's something very, very important to remember. Now, I remember when I was on call, we used to do these horrendous shifts, right? So we used to start at like 5 p.m. and finish at 9 a.m. the next morning. So it was like, good 16 hours. It was really, really difficult. And I used to be so exhausted. Like I said on a previous video, people don't realize like how difficult radiology can be. It feels like, you're just sitting there have a coffee, but it's not really, because your mind is always switched on. You're really, really like at your full pelt mentally. And so I used to find that, it would be like trying to do Sudoku puzzles through the night with no sleep whatsoever. And as the nights go on, you just don't feel like doing Sudoku. It starts to get more complicated as time goes on. And, when you feel like the odds are stacked against you and what you're going to say can make such a significant impact onto the patient journey, then you can feel really, really stressed out. And so what I remember is that in the morning it used to be quite funny because like the consultant used to come in, and this guy used to come in with his like coffee filter thing, and when you're knackered, you've done this night shift, that wafting of coffee was just like, oh, that smells so good right now. And he used to sit next to you, big grin on his face, push that plunger, and I used to feel like more fumes of coffee was flying my way, and I'd be like thinking to myself, bro, man, give me some of that coffee, yo. And then he wouldn't, and instead he used to drinking himself with a big grin on his face and start going through all the things that I missed and didn't miss, and I used to feel terrible. But then what you start to realize is that, well, here's someone that's kind of been in the game longer than I have, yeah, and then on top of that, they've had a full night's sleep, and now they're having a coffee in front of me. Of course they're going to be performing better than I am. I mean, I haven't slept all night. So you've got to kind of realize that you're going to make small little errors here and there, but by the time that you go and call, it's unlikely you're going to miss the big things. And when I say the big things, is like, perforations, massive bleeds, all that kind of stuff. Anything small is unlikely to cause a big problem over the next few hours, right? And anything bigger that you may miss is usually picked up by your colleagues, who you should have the confidence in to be able to pick up a sick patient when they see one. And there's been situations where, the scan looks completely normal to everyone, not just you, the junior on call, and the patient's still sick, and so they end up having to do do some more investigative things, such as actually going inside the patient, having a look and seeing what's actually going on, even though the scans are completely normal. So I wouldn't feel bad if you think that, you know, everything looks normal, there must be something wrong with me. The scan may actually look normal to most people, or the finding is so subtle that most people in your position would probably miss that finding. So that kind of brings us on to the next point, which is don't sweat the small stuff, right? You're looking for the big things, the big blood clots, all that kind of stuff. When you start talking about, you know, the tiny little intricacies of the way the iliac bone, you know, fuses with the sacral bone, making a lumbosacral spine, you know, whatever, that stuff's not important. That's not going to make a big difference to the patient right there and then. So don't sweat the small stuff. You know, all you have to really do is kind of get everyone to the next morning. And it reminds me of when I was a junior doctor, and I was probably, I was a junior doctor, but I had juniors to me, so I was a junior doctor with juniors. And I got a phone call in the middle of the night, and it must have been like 3 o'clock in the morning, and this person was saying to me, listen, Imran, we have got an issue. We've got a patient who's got a low albumin, which is like low protein, essentially. We should do something about that. And I was thinking, there's nothing you could do in the next few hours until the day team comes in that's going to fix the albumin, really. You could, but it's not something that's really going to cause too much of an issue between now and the morning. And clearly this has been a long-term issue. So you're not there to sort out long-term. You're there to sort out the immediate term. Is the patient stable? And if they're stable and they're well in themselves, there's no real reason to be poking and prodding and waking them up in the middle of the night and doing all sorts of other weird and wonderful things when you've got so many other patients to look after. So that's the key. Are they going to make it? Is everything going to be safe enough for everyone to come in the next morning and everything's going to be fine? And if not, then you need to escalate. The other thing I did touch on a previous video is that when you're doing radiology, and I guess with most things, you do have a bit of a checklist of things to get through. And this book, which I'd highly recommend, called Atomic Habits, does touch upon a particular way of avoiding mistakes. And a lot of the book is about building systems. And when things fail, it's more about the failure of the system rather than the failure of the person. And so you've got to start to try and put in a system that's going to enable you to get through an on-call or get through a scan. And so when you're doing radiology, you'll end up having like a little checklist, you know, looking at the liver, looking at the gallbladder, looking at the pancreas, looking at the spleen, etc., etc. Now, the key difference between having a checklist in your mind is to actually say that checklist out loud. So actually, in reality, when I do my reporting, I actually nowadays start to say, the liver looks like this, the pancreas looks like this, etc., etc., out loud to myself. Not so loud that everyone else can hear, otherwise they'll think I'm a bit weird. But I say it loud enough to myself to know that I've said it and looked at it. And once you've said it, you do look at it and you actually end up missing fewer things and you feel more confident that you've done the best that you can for that particular scan. So try that. And the last and final thing I'd say for anyone that is on call is to make sure that you do ask for help. Look, that's what your seniors are there for, right? And you are a junior at the end of the day. And even as a senior, you know, ask for help. Go ask someone. You know, you've got colleagues that will work with you. You've got friends that will work in the same department. If you're unsure, go ask for help. There's no weakness in that. It doesn't mean that you're not a good radiologist or a good doctor if you ask for help. There are contingencies for when you are feeling at your depth or when you're feeling like you don't really know what's going on. And I'd highly, highly recommend that you don't fall into that trap in feeling that asking for help is a sign of weakness. It's not. It's a sign of strength, because that means that you know at what point that you're not going to be able to help or you're not going to be able to get any further and you need senior input. That's really, really important. So in summary, the points are, you're better than you think you are. Don't sweat the small stuff, okay? Don't compare yourself to your seniors and stuff like that, because one day you'll be in that position where you can walk in and you'll be able to find things. The other thing is that you are better than you think you are. You are much, much better than you think you are. You're better than the person asking for the scan in the first place. You also just need to get to the next morning. So all you've got to do, just get to the next morning, get everyone safely to the next morning, and you should be fine. Try and use a checklist, and finally, always be ready to ask for help. Right, I hope that was useful. Feel free to keep asking me questions. I'll try my best to do these videos more regularly. I actually did this video maybe like 3 times, but like the mic stopped working. You know what, I'm new to this YouTube stuff, so my apologies. I will do more videos, so do feel free to put in another comment asking me anything really, and I'll answer the best way that I can. While I'm here, try and have a listen to my podcast called the Two Medics Podcast. It's going pretty well. A lot of people seem to like it, and so if you're interested in listening to like medical life and social media and what it's like to be me and my colleague who does the podcast with me, then why not have a listen, give it a shot. You'll find it on most providers. And then while you're here, why don't you press like, press subscribe, and just be part of the journey. Watch this YouTube channel blossom into whatever it will become. Anyway, thank you for watching. Until next time, bye.